And the lips are pretty obvious. I don't really need to mess with that. So I'm going to get started. So I have the figure here, and I have the rough mass for where the skull sits. So this is what's going to be establishing the scale. And again, if you tend to make things grow as you add clay on, you may want to start with a little bit of smaller piece than you think is necessary. This is pretty close to what I want to keep, so I'm just going to try really hard not to add a whole bunch of clay. So the best way to do a head like this is to cut it off. It's pretty impossible to work and hold on it without squishing something that you care about here, so I'm going to just cut it off. And there's no real good place to do it. I guess you want to go halfway. You're going to have to redo the neck muscles no matter what. But what's really good to do is put it on a tool or a pen, something that you can attach it to without having to worry about it falling off, and also it allows you to not have to squish the face when you're working on the front or the back. So I'm going to stick it in there pretty hard, and then just mess up the neck. I don't really care, but it'll really make sure that it's not going to fall off. So I'm not going to worry about the neck transition at all. I'm just going to finish the jawline and the skull area. It's a little hard to do. You may want to add a little bit of neck muscle on, but again, you'll have to just cut it off and almost guess at the same angle you did it and just fix it on the model later. But the idea is I've got my rough mass in the right volume. Okay, so now this is how I approach a head at this size. I'm just going to smooth it out a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so first I want to match the jawline and then make my rough measurements up the face for the nose, eyes, and lips. So this is what the smaller reference is quite helpful. If you want to print it out the exact scale, that'd be quite helpful. This is a little bit bigger than the scale I'm going to finish at, so I'm just going to guess. Okay. go. Again, I'm just taking some measurements here. Gonna have to add some clay for the cheekbones and nose. I'm pretty much okay with the size of the skull still. Yep, that feels about right. Okay, so now I want to get the profile positions set right. So the eyes face pretty much forward. I don't want to have the socket on an angle like this, so I have to press in, but I don't want to go too far in. So that will change the face quite a bit. So if I see that the socket is in the right place, I might need to add a little bit on the edge here of the skull to bring that cheekbone out. So before I get too far in there, I've got to really make sure I get the jawline from the front done right. I'm going to avoid getting any more detail there until I get that roughed in. But now I have something to use as reference point, so I can feel the shape. So from the side, obviously it may be right, but until you get that transition looking good in 3/4, it's never going to feel right. One of the hardest things is to handle it and not change the shape overall. So again, having this tool inside really helps. Okay, now I'm looking at the corner of the jaw. You can see from the front, it makes a huge difference, just setting these 2 points. So I'm also looking at it from the side, making sure that it is not too far forward. Just trying to make sure it feels right from all angles. Okay, now the major part of the cheeks under the eyes. Probably a little too much clay there. I'm just going to try to work it up around the eye socket. Big mistake is to put all this too far forward. A huge problem with the 3D modeling too, a lot of beginners, they place this corner of the mouth way too far forward on the face. And you end up with these flat looking lips which look spot on the reference from the front view but completely horrible from the 3/4 inside. And they just don't feel right. And this, the biggest secret I can tell you is just push that corner back. That feels better. Check it against the model, it's still about the right scale. This feels better. Okay. So I'm just trying to balance the volume. This is going to feel wrong until I get a rough nose on there, so I'm going to add just a little bit. That still looks good. I'm fighting the urge to add too much there. I'd rather start with less. So now I'm going to add a bit for the brow ridge in a second. And it's all going to come together. I have to make holes for the nostrils, so I don't want to get too much clay up on the nose here yet. Especially on a female character, you probably don't want to have a giant nose if you're trying to make it a flattering likeness. There we go, not bad. See, I'm keeping it all kind of this rough sketch quality, or trying to make it all the same before going into any details. Better balance it out before I move on. Go. It's starting to look like a face. Getting these eyes blocked in is going to really, really help. Before going too far with that though, I want to get that nose seated in the right place. Now, right now it's way too high. A bit too small. What I'm doing is I'm closing one eye and I'm lining it up. From my perspective, I'm seeing the profile match the reference. So I can really easily tell that the nose is just a little bit too high. So I'm just adding a small piece. Smooth it in. Much better. So the hint at the nostrils, I'm just pushing a little bit, not carving in anything, I'm just making it so that I can see sort of a shadow of the nostrils, get the placement right. Now, so the whole front of the forehead is way too far sloped back, so I'm going to be adding eyebrow ridge now and forehead going up. There's no real rule about doing it in this order, I just seem to work it out as I go. About right. Okay, so now the slope of the forehead, again, is the hardest thing to keep when you're doing things, when you're trying to hold that thing in your hand. So having it on this peg is going to help me a lot. See, already it's growing. I gotta be careful. It's gonna get bigger with hair too. I want to not make it look like a giant head in relation to the body. is much, much closer. So, that is probably the biggest problem. It's already grown quite a bit. Take it down a notch here, hold on. Until I add something there. So it's always going to look weird bald until you get some hair on, but it does help to have the back of the skull kind of roughed in. Make sure your volume is right. I'm holding it very lightly right now. I'm trying my best not to squish and change the shape and profile. Better. And it's also better to get this skull in the right shape before you start detailing the face. And it grew. So I try to start a little smaller than usual, or than I mean to. Okay, so now, getting these eyebrows and the eyes right, you'll see it all sort of come together. Trying to make sure this transition is just right before I get into any detail in the eye. Getting pushed back a little bit too far. So now I'm on to the picky parts. I've got to be really careful here, and I'm just going to keep going back and forth until it feels right. Pretty happy with this area. Some measurements here. I think the puffiness under the eye, I've got to outline that and make sure that the cheek comes up high enough. I think that's the problem right now. Yep, and it's so close. You can see that transition between the nose and the cheekbone can make all the difference. Make the eye feel set right. And the outside corner. Yeah, so I'm gonna stop it pretty soon and keep going. Pick it up again when I get further. But hopefully you get the idea. I've measured out mostly what I need. I've got it feeling pretty good on this right side. Feels good in profile. It's getting close. So I'm going to work on making sure the measurements are right. I'm going to do the other side. And when it all feels right, we can start on the detail.